If you've been considering buying property in Brisbane, then this short video is going to give you some extremely solid insight into where to look at, what's going on, and the fundamentals of the market. Now, Simon and I bought over $250 million worth of property in Brisbane in the last 5 years, and this video is based 100% off that insight of what we've learned and what we're learning as we move forward as well.
Now, first thing to recognise is Brizzy is a massive city, especially when you're looking at like Greater Brisbane, where there's over 260 different suburbs.
I feel overwhelmed already.
Yeah, how hard would it be to identify like one or two key suburbs to focus on when you're looking at 260? So what we've done as a business and as investors that like to purchase properties in these markets is narrow that down to pockets, because then it can help you identify where you should be focusing, and it just lowers that search criteria massively.
Without a doubt. So we'll talk about north, south, east and inner Brisbane in a moment. But before I do, the key fundamentals that you need to understand about this market, which we're talking to people about every single day, is Brisbane has extremely low vacancy rates at the moment. In fact, it's completely undersupplied from a property perspective. I've heard in some suburbs people are living in cars. I've seen rents in some suburbs go up by as much as $200 since the start of the year per week. Like, it's very undersupplied, and that's creating pressure, not just on the rental market, but on the home buying market. Because interest rates are as low as they are, I know people that would be paying 30 grand a year to rent that can buy a property in the same suburb and have interest-only home loan with a 20% deposit, paying 15 grand a year to live there. So it's an interesting thing when there's that much pressure from two parts of the market, and that's why we've seen Brisbane grow by as much as 12% on average over the last 12 months now. Yeah,
well, in 2020, there was over 30,000 people that moved into Queensland, and we know when people move to Queensland, they do prioritise the southeastern corridor, so putting even more pressure on both the rental market and also buying properties.
You know, on top of a very low rental vacancy rate, in most parts of the city, we've got very strong incomes. In fact, they're higher per household than Melbourne now. We've got very, very strong DSR, which is demand to supply ratio scores. So a lot of suburbs would be sitting at above 60% to 80% now, which shows very strong pressure on the market that if market continues to hold that pressure will result in medium-term price increases. We've got good suburbs with very strong infrastructure, very strong schooling, very high percentages of owner-occupiers, which I think is always important as an investor to look at. So fundamentally, on top of the infrastructure that the government's putting in, Brisbane looks really, really strong, and historically speaking, should capture a good percentage of Australia's capital growth in the next 5 or 6 years.
And those fundamentals will help you feed out a few suburbs as well when you're looking, because we do want to target investment grade suburbs, investment grade properties that are in good locations. With all of these fundamentals looking good, it helps when you're identifying those areas.
Yeah, so let's look at Brisbane Inner or CBD at the moment. Now, what we're talking about there is 15 k's from the city. I think Heron Todd White, based on a report that Simon showed me this morning, was saying that there really isn't anything under market value in that area anymore. There's no longer a suburb that people don't know about.
Yeah.
The cat's out of the bag that Brisbane looks good, and people like to buy within the city centre. So prices are rising very quickly there, and we've seen suburbs go up by 50k in the year. We've seen others go up by as much as 500k within that area just this year alone.
And it naturally makes sense, right? Because you've got a lot of people moving up here. You've got high average household incomes and affordable property prices. You know, say 2-3 years ago, you could buy within 15 k's of the Brisbane CBD for less than $600,000, and there was so much value in that. So, you know, a lot of people have jumped onto that. Now, as Ben says, the cat's out of the bag, and as HTW said, there's no hidden gems within that 15-kilometre radius. So for us, it's not that we don't see value there, and I think there's still a lot of potential, but with how hot it is right now, we're not really looking too heavily within that 15-kilometre radius.
You know, what's important for you is to understand that there might be like a market like Kangaroo Point, where a beautifully renovated home is going to sell for $2 million
at least.
And then you could go from Kangaroo Point to Kedron, which is like 7 k's, or Cannon Hill, which is 6 k's from the city, and you'll find a really nice unrenovated home for just under $1 million. Or you'll find a nice, beautifully renovated or brand new home in that 1 to 1.5 mil mark. But then you could go to like a Stafford, which is 9Ks, or an Arana Hills or an Everton Hills, which is a little bit further, or a Tingalpa type thing. And those types of properties still within that 15K ring could be being bought for 600 to 800K right now. So when we say there's no hidden gems, everyone understands these suburbs and these markets, but within that market, there is a price point that's still very affordable. Like if you're selling a home for $1 million in Sydney, you can easily replace it with something closer to the city up here for 700K right now, which is super exciting. And I think because those suburbs have still only grown by 2 to 4% per year for the last 10 years versus their long-term average of 9%, there's value there for people that it's just not for us as a business right now.
Yeah, you know, the average person that's giving us a call is sort of going, you know, my budget sits somewhere between that $400,000 to $700,000 mark, which I think that's a comfortable place for people that are buying their first, second, third or fourth investment property.
Without a doubt. Now, if we go east, East Brisbane is kind of like East Melbourne or Eastern Sydney. It's the place where it's the closest beachside suburbs to the CBD, very good infrastructure, trains, good arterial roads, very high incomes, very low percentages of mums and... What am I saying? Very low percentages of renters.
Yeah, there's some
good areas.
Really good demographics. And, you know, we bought a lot of properties in areas like Wynnum, Manly, Thornside back about 3-4 years ago, and there was lots of value out there, and there still is an amazing amount of value out there because most of these suburbs were developed quite a long time ago, you know, 50, 60 years ago, and there's still those pockets where you can get like a rundown house or an unrenovated joint for an affordable price, and then, you know, maybe a street or two closer to the beaches, you've got these beautiful knockdown rebuilds or beautiful character homes that are selling for over $1 million, but there's still value just on those outskirts.
Why I like these areas, again, I think the horse is bolted. If you're looking for value, the CBD or inner plus Eastern Beaches, you know, they've all gone up by 5 to 6% in the last 10 years per year. So you're not getting anything that anyone doesn't know about. But if you look at like Manly, the best beachside suburb in Brisbane, versus Cronulla or Manly in Sydney or St Kilda, Port of Melbourne in Melbourne, or one of the nicer suburbs even, they're still only 30 to 40 cents in the dollar in comparison. So from a long-term perspective, there is massive value there. And from a relocating to a beautiful beachside lifestyle, like, they're gorgeous places to live.
Yeah, and you've got like a lot of nice suburbs east to the city as well that are along the river that is just so beautiful.
Yeah, so then we sort of moved north to North Brisbane. Now, North Brisbane's the same as North Sydney in the sense that there's a whole lot of really beautiful property as you go out from the CBD in that 15 to 25, 30K range. And then there's a whole beachside component as well now.
There's sort of the hillside component too.
Of course, yeah. Then there's the beautiful Northwestern Hills district.
Yeah, exactly. So very comparable to Sydney there.
Yeah, and exactly, actually, like so similar to the Hills district in Sydney.
Yeah. So Ben and I personally own properties in the Northside, closer to the beaches, up near that Redcliffe Peninsula. I think there's a hell of a lot of value up there. You know, once again, comparing a location like this to, you know, your DYs, Collaroys, you know, even further up to Narrabeen, it's obviously completely different beaches because you don't have the ocean, you don't have the waves, but you still got, you know, surf clubs in some of these suburbs. You still got beautiful esplanades that are like go for over 20 kilometres or something like that. You've got really good cafe culture, restaurants, good school districts. The public transport options are getting better and better and better. So really, really love the potential there.
You know, and what I like is it's 35 minutes with traffic, you know, 40 minutes with traffic, 25 minutes without it to the CBD for work. And that's a pretty enticing thing lifestyle-wise for a family of high-income earners. I've got a bunch of mates and clients that have actually moved there.
Yeah. You
know, on average, they'd be earning 200 to 500 grand a year, like good income earners, good business people. And that's washing out what used to be there, which is like a much lower demographic, the same as the beaches on Sydney used to have.
Yeah, like we like to look at Brisbane maybe 20, 25 years behind Sydney. So
Fully.
it's like the demographics, the type of people that were living in these locations. Sydney side 20 years ago, similar to Brisbane, different but similar. But then you've also got like the hillside. So you've got the hinterland that's out to the west. It's only really about 15, 20 kilometres from the coast. So it only makes like a small area that can be developed. But, you know, you've got Sanford Valley up there. You go up into Petrie Terrace and all of these beautiful locations where you've got like big still farmland out there, more rainforest sort of vibe. It's got like a real nice country feel about it as well. So you get that balance real close to the coast up here as well. And I think there's heaps of value. And then even if you come just a bit closer to the M1 there as well, you know, you got the new Petrie University that's opened up and some of the suburbs around there. Plus you got the massive new Westfield that came up about 5-6 years ago now.
North Lakes one.
The North Lakes one.
Yeah.
You know, Chermside's just been redone as well. So lots and lots of value on that north side that we love.
You know, and places there would be well under 600. In fact, in a bunch of those suburbs, well under 500. Like, we're talking close to the city, incredible infrastructure, sunny coast on the weekend just up the road. So Northside's a really good opportunity, which I don't think has gone through as much growth as inner and eastern Brisbane. Then we come to the southern side. Now, South and West Brisbane have been absolutely peppered on the forums, and for good reason and not so good reasons. Effectively, in both markets, there's some suburbs with some major demographic issues, some high crime rates, some like heavy cultural mismatching stuff going on, and as a result, a whole bunch of like low income earners living in one area. Now, I think in South Brisbane there's probably 4 suburbs that are a little bit rougher, but I love them. Like, personally, I think they're actually the most undervalued suburbs in Oz right now.
Because you're still buying these locations for 300 grand.
300k for a house within 25 k's of the city.
It's 25-minute drive. Like, it's such a short drive. And, you know, 600 square block, 3 bed, 1 bath. Like, if you can stomach the fact that you're not going to live in the property and maybe you won't have the highest of quality tenants, there's so much upside potential in those areas.
You know, and South's the same as North. So there's these pockets on one side of the highway that are affordable, you know, in the 300 to 500k range. And then you literally go across a 4-lane highway and you've got the exact same houses, but for some reason people living there feel like a little bit wealthier. And so the same joint's selling for 600 to 800k right now. And I love this about Brisbane. As soon as you get out of the inner, you can have a suburb that's closer to the city, 19k's for 300, and this suburb that's perceived to be better, 30k's away, that's selling for $1 million. It is beautiful, and because of that, because we haven't gone through the rising tide lifting every boat, so much value in South Brisbane. We love it at the moment.
And this is where we find those hidden gems. So you can't find them closer to the city, but as soon as you get that little bit further from the city, that 15 to 30 kilometre radius, there is so many amazing hidden gems. And in the south side, there's massive amounts of infrastructure spending on upgrading the major arterial roads, the highways, the train lines. There's lots of new infrastructure going in as well. So this is going to bring jobs, it's going to bring money to the area, it's going to make it more connected, it's going to make it flow a hell of a lot easier. And over time, as we start to see population increases throughout Brisbane, the gentrification is going to naturally occur, and these areas that are sketchy now will start to become a little bit better.
What I've seen from looking at the data is as soon as a suburb's average rent return is $450 a week, the entire suburb cleans up. A lot of these suburbs, you're already seeing $350 to $400 a week in rent return because the yields are so high there. They're getting to the point where people on Centrelink and low-income earners have to move west. And that's going to occur, and it occurred in the south side of Sydney, it occurred in the south eastern side of Melbourne and East Melbourne. It is occurring in parts of North and West Melbourne at the moment. It's occurring in parts a bit further away from Perth. It's just a natural thing where, like, if your tenant wants to increase, I think across my properties in Brisbane, I've increased the rents by $550 a week this year alone. Every time that happens, I lose a tenant in one of my properties because they're bumped out of that suburb, which sucks. But the rising tide in rents and the demand is going to push people out. Southern side also has some beaches that we love too.
Yeah,
Massively undervalued.
I love this corridor because like there's still, you're still within sort of 30 k's from the city. But there's lots of farmland in these locations because it's closer to the water, good climate, good soil. There's some, mountains, some wineries around the locations. We're starting to see some new developments pop up, which are going to be great for the areas. But if you can identify some of these existing suburbs that haven't yet received as much attention or as many eyes as some of the locations closer to the city, some real hidden gems down there.
For sure. Now, if we take a step out of the southern side and we look at West Brisbane, I just think we're a little bit early in the cycle for me to be looking at it at the moment. I just feel like there's 200 years worth of land between, Brisbane, West Brisbane until you get out to Toowoomba, maybe even 500 years worth of development potential.
It's real, there is mountains, but there is lots of available land. And, when you're looking at some of these locations where you're 60 k's from the city and you're buying a house and land package for $450,000, it's like, why wouldn't you try and buy within 25 k's of the city for 450 grand on a bigger piece of land? So
100%.
like always we're linking to the fundamentals. 100% of the time we link back to our fundamentals. We look at history. We'll look at markets like Sydney and Melbourne that are about 15 to 30 years in front of Brisbane, and we try and identify where the most value is going to be.
Regardless of where you choose to buy based on your goals, the market, and what you can afford, the fundamentals are a big home on a big piece of land in a great suburb, in a quiet street, close to transport, close to the city, close to the beach, in an affordable range where people aren't stretched. Now, I was looking back at some data from the GFC last week, and at that particular point, I think rents were about 50% of the average household income in Sydney and Melbourne, and the price of houses, like in terms of like the servicing, was requiring at least 50% of people's income after tax a week. Now, I look at that and I go, if that's a threshold point where like, it's hard for some people to borrow, Brisbane looks beautiful because some of these suburbs we're talking about, 15 to 20% of their income is being put towards paying the rent. 15 to 20% is being put towards, the mortgage. And I like that because there's upside potential before they hit a dangerous point. When I look at Sydney now, there's at least half of the suburbs are getting at that 40 to 50% range, which just means that unless we let a whole lot of wealthy people into those markets or a whole lot of investors around the world come back to speculate, it's tricky to see, how the average person down there is going to keep going up without foreclosing in 5 years' time.
Yeah, so it's looking at so many different factors, and that's why we love it. I think there is value in all of these locations in Brisbane, and it's just about narrowing that 260 suburb list down to 2 or 3 maximum that you become a complete specialist in. You know where the main roads are, you know where the shops are, you know where the public transport options are, you know where the flood zones are, you know where the lower quality pockets are, you know where the best streets are, and you really become a specialist and go in there, because investing is all about confidence and, knowing your numbers so that you can get ideally the best ROI over the longer term.
For those of you who are looking for some support in Brisbane, I know a lot of you are going to go take this and absolutely smash it yourselves, and we wish you all the best, but we do offer a small number of people from Australia the opportunity to work with us each month. All you need to do is jump over to www.pumpedonproperty.com, book in a complimentary strategy session with one of us in the team. We can talk about where you are, where you're looking to go, fully educate you on Brisbane in a lot more detail, and then you can take that and go and smash it on your own. Or maybe you can come and work with us and you can leverage off our relationships and experience and get an incredibly good long-term property in the Brisbane market. But either way, we wish you all the best. It's such an exciting time for Brisbane. Like, so many of these areas are legitimately cheaper to buy when you take out inflation than they were 10, 12, 13 years ago. It's an exciting time to be an investor up here, and we wish you all the best.
Sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good.